Hi, this is Chuck Braverman. This is another episode of Westdoc Online. I'm very concerned about the entire state of the documentary world. Things are happening all over, as you know. Fewer documentaries are ending up on the major streamers and the networks. This last week, Realscreen decided to fold NAPD and not to do their Realscreen Summit anymore after 25 years, which indicates that what? I don't know what it indicates, except that people aren't buying tickets to Realscreen Summit, amongst other things. So I'm very concerned. But at the same time, I keep seeing some really terrific, great films. And today we have one of those films that we want to talk about with the two directors of the film. And the film is called Just Sing.
I'm on the edge. I'm sorry. And I'm hanging on a moment with you.
Vocals on three. 1, 2, 3.
One of the biggest misconceptions surrounding a cappella is that it's kind of Glee-esque, but it's so much more than that.
Acapella has become cool since Pitch Perfect. 600 groups, 12,000 students competing every year.
The ICCA is everything.
Every single night we're rehearsing.
Again, one more time.
You have to be dedicated to the win. Winning this would probably open a lot of doors.
This group has a huge legacy.
Every time they've entered the competition, they've won.
You better unlock your inner Beyonce.
Being an a cappella has really changed my life.
I would do anything for these people and this group.
That's the dream. Make music that's going to touch people and is going to last a lifetime.
There's just something about that group that just makes people feel like they belong and they have a purpose.
It's really special to me.
We try to just be in the moment and just sing.
And let's say hello to Abraham Troen and co-director Angelique Molina.
Hello.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi. Very glad to be
Thanks
here.
for having us.
Great. Well, I always ask, first things first, where are you here? Abraham, where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking to you from Tel Aviv at the moment in Israel.
Well, that's a first for us, I think, from Tel Aviv. That's great. And what time is it there? It's, let me guess, about 6 or 7 o'clock at night? Well, it's 9 a.m. here.
7:15 p.m. Yeah.
7:15 p.m. and we're at 9 a.m. And Angelique, where are
I am in
you?
Los Angeles, so I'm also 9 a.m.-ish.
Well, let me ask. Let's say this is a very terrific musical film about an a cappella group, and a cappella has suddenly become cool since Pitch Perfect is a smash hit. And how did this film come about?
The film's producer, Sarah Thompson, was a fan of Pitch Perfect and was involved also in that narrative film, the release of it. And so she always had a dream of doing a documentary, the real life Pitch Perfect. I had worked with her on several documentaries in the past, and she approached me, and Angelique and I had worked together on several documentaries in the past. And she sent us off to film a pitch tape, which is really to do like a proof of concept and test the ground for what is material here for making a documentary. So we went and met the SoCal Vocals, who are the undefeated champion of the competition on which Pitch Perfect is based. And when we met them in the home they lived called the Acapella House.
The Vocal House, the SoCal Vocal House.
The SoCal Vocal House. Other people on campus know it as the Acapella House because that's what they do there all day. And we sort of fell in love both with the competition, but more importantly, the people themselves, who not only had amazing voices, but also, were just remarkable people with really interesting stories. And next thing you know, 2 years of our lives were dedicated to following them and making this film.
And I must say, the pun, the casting was pitch perfect because the kids in the film are fabulous. And another reason that I like this film, because I happen to go to USC where this film is centered, and I assume that the a cappella house is down in the fraternity row-ish area somewhere or close to the school, right? So, and the kids all live there in the house, or not?
A lot of them
Some
did.
of the kids?
Not everybody lived there, but some of them lived down the street. But it's definitely their hub and where they meet for practice, and it's definitely the hub of where they end up every day after class. And to communicate with each other, to hang out with each other, they walk around singing. It's truly what you would think it is, and more.
And what was the process of approaching the students to get, I assumed, signed releases from everybody to say we can do anything we want with this film in any context, you know? And did you have any issues with any of them, or did everybody say, "Oh, great, just film our lives and we'll see what happens"?
I would say that's more of a producer question than a director question, but I think the trust was built. It took time to get intimacy, like real intimacy, which was what you see in the film. But I think we built trust fairly quickly, that there was a sense of we could do something meaningful together with us following them over a period of time, and they signed up for that journey. As you'll see in the film, you know, it's not only following the characters in some instances, it's also meeting their parents and going back to the places they came from. That also took time, but that is just sort of an organic part of the documentary journey.
A little different in a way than most films that we have discussed here, in that it seems, as you explained, that the film came from the producers who brought you guys in. And there are 4, 5, 6 production companies listed in the press notes here. And I'm just wondering if you want to tell me a little bit about them or not. I mean, Ventureland is prominently featured, and Mercury Studios, and WIIP, WIP, I guess it's called. And what can you say about them? Anything that's meaningful in terms of the making of this film? Or
Well, Ventureland are the capital P producers. It's Sarah Thompson and John Batzek. They are based in London, and you know, John has done many amazing films, like Searching for Sugar Man is the most notable. While we were on this production, the documentary about Bobby Wine, who was running for government in Uganda, was nominated for an Academy Award. So they really run the gamut from films that have a social statement and a political say, to projects, not that they don't have a social statement, but things like on the David Beckham story on Netflix. So they really have a wide range of types of projects. And this one, I think from the very get-go, the desire was to make a meaningful, joyful film full of music and love, and a coming-of-age portrait in today through music and song. And that goal was stated from the top. They brought in Mercury, which is the documentary branch of UMG, the music company, and WIP, who have done incredible projects. An LA-based company as well came on board. And the film really had an amazing team to work with to make this film.
I mean, the people that you've mentioned are certainly A-plus people, but it sounds like a lot of, what's the expression? Hands in the kitchen, or a lot of people. How did that affect your filming and your post and everything else?
So one would think, because yes, there are a lot of folks involved, but we had a lot of creative leeway to build these relationships with the students, you know, in the editing room with our wonderful editors, Paul and Kevin. We had a lot of creative, you know, I wouldn't say control. We had, you know, they let us be creative, essentially, and we built the story together, and they guided us. But we never had any kind of issues of like too many hands in the pot or too many cooks in the kitchen. It was definitely a collaborative experience that was pretty smooth.
As we speak here, we're in the middle of April, and your film is going to be released, I think, first for one special night on Gather with, I don't remember, 70 or 80 venues, and then Braverman has the film for theatrical. So what are the prospects, do you think, commercially for this film? I mean, that's a tough question because you don't know how it's going to do, but I'm just curious as to what your feeling is about.
What would the hope be?
Well, yeah, what would the hope be? And do you hope after it goes theatrical that it's going to end up on one of the major streamers, or just be a video on demand, or what do you think?
I hope, first of all, that people come to the movie theaters and watch the film. We know from now that we have sold out screenings in Boston.
Really?
And also that it's in Philadelphia.
Chicago.
From the latest numbers I know, the Boston.
Is this the Gather screenings that are happening on the 23rd?
Yes. And, I think this is a sort of film that is great to watch on your laptop, but it's honestly even funner to watch it and more so hear it in a movie theater. So we're hoping that people can enjoy that experience. And in my dream world, they leave the theater singing. And yes, I think the goal is that enough people watch it in the movie theater and that it can end up in whatever form possible that as many people get to enjoy this movie. I think
so. You guys, without going into too much detail, have really terrific credits of films on HBO and Netflix and the major streamers. I'm wondering if we can just for a second talk about what you think the current status of the documentary film world is. I mean, you can, in terms of this film and the rest of the documentary world.
I have a mentor, but now a close friend that as I, went from my 20s to my 30s and through the struggles of being in this industry and wanting to quit every other day because of, just especially documentary world, we know that it's not always like paying the big bucks sometimes. And she always told me that the people that the people that are a success in the industry are the people that don't quit. And, and it's nothing to the folks that have to quit. Like, it's hard, if you financially cannot make it, it's probably wise to quit. Like, it's not a judgment on people who don't continue. But I think that, like everything, there's going to be an evolution. And I'm not sure if I can predict what that is in this film industry. But if it still calls to you, I think you should still continue in some capacity. Even the industry is hard. And like I said, every other day, sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? And do I want to do this still? But I don't think you can stop yourself from being creative. I don't think you can stop yourself from wanting to make stories and collaborate with your peers and your friends in whatever capacity that looks like. Like, literally, if you're on a cell phone or if you have the greatest camera in the world and the biggest crew in the world, like, I think people are going to continue to make art no matter what that looks like. And we're seeing a shift, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I don't think that art stops because capitalism takes place.
I mean, I think it's not only a question of creating art. I think it's also a question of consuming documentaries. And what sort of films are people gravitating to? I mean, it's one thing to say that right now the streamers are avoiding political content, content, and are going.
Of course, this was hardly political content at all, right?
No, it's not.
Although there are very few murders in the film and very few superstars in the film.
And
right?
so, yes, that's what people are looking for: the celebrities and the drama of a true crime or whatever. But continue, AB, sorry.
Well, so when you started, here's an unfair question. When you started this film 2 years ago, did you think it was going to be picked up by Netflix, first out of the box, and you'd finish the film, it'd be on Netflix, and everybody would be happy, or otherwise?
Well, again, these are more producer questions. I mean, I'm happy to answer, our personal hopes, but...
Well, then what you thought.
I think Angelique and I are happy to discuss the story and like creative aspects of things. But yes, obviously the dream ultimately for any documentary is that the widest audience possible has access
And
to
I
it.
think that like as filmmaker,
You know, and yeah, and I think we're also aware of the reality in which we operate. You know, the film premiered at Tribeca. It had like the Friday night slot with 900 people, sold out audience. It had a standing ovation at the end, and the room was full of joy, and you know, it was a really wonderful moment to be in. The next morning was the director's brunch. And of all the films at Tribeca, I've never seen so many people asking each other the question, who's going to watch your film outside of this premiere festival? So those are real questions that all of us are asking ourselves. Does it stop us from creating art? No. We have an incentive to go out and create and try to make things that are meaningful and will resonate with an audience outside of a festival premiere. Will that happen or not is not all in our control. And I think that ultimately, if we only ask ourselves, is this going to end up on Netflix? Then why wake up in the morning and try to create documentaries at all? That cannot be the only guiding question that we ask ourselves.
I think also we've always, as artists, there's always like a level of delusion until you reach reality. You can't, I mean, honestly, like you have to dream big. You can't sit here and be like, well, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and it's okay if my cousin sees it. And it is, because sometimes that's just the reality. Sometimes your cousin's gonna be the only person seeing it. But you walk in with a level of delusion where the world is going to see this. The world is going to experience these SoCal vocals that have put in all of their skills and all of their time and all of their energy and have shown and been vulnerable with their amazing stories. So yes, I do walk around with the delusion of like, the world is going to see this one day. And you know,
but Angelique, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't say you walk around with a delusion that the world will see this film one day. You walk around with the hope that the people will watch the film one day. Those are two different things. Delusion.
A little crazy. That you're literally delusional.
Happen. Important distinction. Right,
yeah, I mean, there's hope. We can't walk around hopeless.
Here's when I was watching this film. By the way, obviously, the audience for this web series, which has been going on for 6 years, and we're almost up to 200 episodes.
Congrats.
With a lot of filmmakers, and that's why this interview was probably a little different than most of the interviews that you've done.
Yeah.
From a filmmaker's POV. One of the first questions that I thought, although I guess, I mean, it's obvious to some degree, but is music clearance. You had, some extremely well-known music in this film from some superstars. And I'm wondering if that became, when you were filming the group and they broke into some Bob Dylan song or somebody, Beyonce or somebody, were you thinking, oh, that's great, we're filming this, we'll never get to use it? Or how did all the music get cleared? I mean, I know how it got cleared, but but how did it get cleared?
The film is produced, again, also by Mercury Studios, who are part of UMG. So that's an important aspect of this, right? Ross, the music supervisor, has years of experience, like doing particularly this during songs. So there was also some work in advance with Sarah Thompson, who I'm sure also had some sleepless nights doing this, but also between her, Ross, and the SoCal vocals, both in figuring out which songs they would sing, down the road with all the other groups, just ensuring we could get clearance to all those songs. And I think it's really a testament to their hard work that, all the amazing music in the film is in the film.
I also think that they were like our protectors from that stress. Ross and I'm sure they had sleepless nights, but they didn't put that on us to be stressed about whether the music clears or not. We were, on set and finding the story and creating the story and creating relationships with all of these wonderful participants. And I think they protected us from that stress of like, is Beyonce going to say yes? So credit to them.
Were there some pieces from the filmmaking that you couldn't use?
There's a wonderful scene which did not make the film, which is to say, should I say the song? Yeah, it's I heard it through the grapevine.
Marvin Gaye.
It's the best version of I Heard It Through the
ever hear.
Grapevine that you will not hear, Chuck. That's what I can say.
And you couldn't use it, right?
It didn't make the cut. Let's
Yeah,
just leave it
yeah.
at that.
Now I have to ask a couple of a geeky question or
Love
two,
it.
and that is, I think both of you were credited as shooting parts of this
All of
together,
it.
or separately. And so, what camera did you use? Because it looked beautiful.
Thanks.
It looked fabulous.
We used the Sony FX6 and Sony FX3.
Wow, really?
And we worked with Cinevisuals. Kobitsai, he is like an amazing lens rental house in LA, and he gave this film his personal set of vintage Nikon lenses. I've used those very same lenses for previous projects. I'm using them now on a current project, and they help, create sort of a beautiful, intimate kind of feeling. Angelique and I used prime lenses to make this documentary, not zoom lenses. So we were really like there in the trenches, swapping lenses with each other.
With the exception of the performances.
What
With the exception of the performances, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's
what were the lenses that you were shooting on the Nikon? What was the focal length? Rough, 35, 50?
15, 35, 15, 28, 35, 50, 85, 105.
What are you guys doing? What are you individually or together doing next?
two personal projects that are also documentaries, and working on that, obviously trying to get all that. There's, stages to it, the pitch process, the, getting funding. So doing that, but also working in the industry as, multiple roles. I AC, I do all kinds of things to make it work as a documentarian.
I pay my rent sometimes as a DOP on all sorts of documentary projects. However, and I'm deeply involved in a personal project at the moment. In the middle of making this film, my sister and brother-in-law were both murdered in their home. I'm from Israel, and they were murdered in front of my nieces and nephew on October 7th. And I was not going to make a personal documentary about it. I was basically jumping between completing this particular film and being a family member in really insane conditions. And roughly a year into that, as this film came to a close and reality didn't stop being really insane in Israel, different people sort of approached me and said, why don't you go and start, maybe you should film some of what's going on firsthand. And that project, by now I'm in my second filmmaker residency, and by support from different foundations who support Palestinian and Israeli filmmakers. And I'm deep in the trenches. I feel a little bit like a hobbit marching directly into Mordor. But I think it's important to show some of the human realities, the cost of violence. And how real human beings live far away from the headlines. So that is what I am up to.
Thank you for being a guest. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed.
Well, I was just going to say thank you for having us, and go see Just Sing in theaters in LA and New York, April 24th.